Last summer, I went to Spain with one of my best friends, and we had an incredible time. But not because we talked about all of the fun things that we wanted to happen on our trip, but instead, we talked about everything we hoped didn't happen. Essentially, we created an anti-vision for our vacation. Lately, I've been talking about how negativity bias can weigh down your progress and how self-trust is the key to unlocking your dreams. But what if you don't know what your dream life is? Maybe you're so mired in negativity about what's possible for you that when it comes to things like vision boards and manifesting, your mind just goes blank. If that sounds familiar, the answer might lie in creating an anti-vision for your life. An anti-vision is a clear picture of everything you don't want. If you struggle to imagine what your dream life might look like, this is where negativity bias can actually help you. It's often much easier to identify what you don't want. For example, you might not know what your dream job is, but I bet you can describe a nightmare job. My nightmare job would be being stuck in pointless meetings all day long or having to do customer support over the phone. From just looking at that portion of my anti-vision, I can identify that I value working independently. I like to see tangible outcomes from my efforts. I crave flexibility in my schedule, and I prefer remote work over a traditional 9-to-5 with endless Outlook reminders. From my anti-vision, I can recognize that working a job that involves me talking on the phone isn't a good fit, and that I find it draining to listen to complaints all day. By creating an anti-vision, you can uncover what you value the most. You can make an anti-vision for as many areas of life as you can think of. If you want some guidance on how to create an anti-vision, I created a graphic that you can get by downloading it at the link in the description. Start with major areas like work, home, health, relationships, community, and finances. Here's what my anti-vision looks like. At work, I'm in a corporate job where I'm micromanaged all day and forced to attend pointless meetings. My anti-vision of a home would be a dark and drafty house with no natural light. Like I talked about in my video on creating your own plant self-care guide, I need a lot of sun. In my relationships, my anti-vision would be being surrounded by people who are negative or who love to complain. In my anti-vision for my health, I live in a cold and rainy place, which means that I rarely go outside and I definitely don't take long walks. I like to also create anti-visions for things that are less high stakes than the rest of your life. Like, for example, a project you're working on, or in my case, a trip that I'm going on. Before I went on this trip to Spain with my friend Connor, we shared our anti-vision for the trip. Part of Connor's anti-vision was that we skipped breakfast every day and that he would end up cranky and tired because of low blood sugar. So in order to avoid the anti-vision coming true, we made it a priority to eat a big breakfast every day before we went exploring. And one day when our bus connection never arrived and we were both getting overheated in the hot sun of southern Spain, I could tell that he was crashing. Because he had shared his anti-vision with me, I insisted that he duck into an air-conditioned supermarket and get himself a snack, and he told me later that he was really grateful that I intervened in that moment because he was on the verge of a crash. My own anti-vision for our trip to Spain was that we would get so caught up in sightseeing and visiting with the friends who we were traveling to see that we wouldn't have any time to just relax and chill out on the beach. Since swimming in the sea is one of my all-time favorite things, it was totally part of my anti-vision for the trip that I would come home without ever having a chance to dip in the ocean. After sharing this part of my anti-vision for the trip, we made sure to set aside an entire afternoon where we went for a swim in the ocean and ate some delicious seafood right on the beach. I loved that day, but the best part wasn't the swimming. The best part was feeling like my needs and preferences were being heard and valued. This anti-vision helped us to prevent resentment and frustration from building up, and at the end of the trip, we had a conversation in which we both agreed that it was the best traveling that we had ever experienced together. And we've gone a lot of places. So once you have your own anti-vision, the next step is to look for the essences in each part of it. An essence is the core characteristic or the feeling that you get when you experience something. For example, a big part of my anti-vision for my life is having a rigid schedule that's controlled by someone else. I actually don't mind a rigid schedule if I'm the one deciding it. So the essence is not about avoiding having structure altogether. It's about me feeling a sense of independence and control over my time. So some questions you can ask yourself are, what are the essences behind the elements of my anti-vision? And how do those essences make me feel? What is the opposite of those essences? And how can I build more of that into my own life? For me, the essence of someone else controlling my schedule feels stifling. The opposite of that, having autonomy over my own time, makes me feel empowered and free. So once you've identified the essences, make sure to flip them around to understand what it is you truly want. My anti-vision shows me that I value freedom, independence, light-filled spaces, and positivity in my relationships. These are clues to what my dream life looks like. The important thing to keep in mind is that a lot of times what we are seeking is not specific circumstances like having a specific job or living in a specific location. It's more about how we want to feel in those circumstances. So what about you? What does your anti-vision reveal about your desires? The last step is to take some action about what you've uncovered in your anti-vision. This is the hard part. You might have to face the reality that your life looks a little bit like some parts of your anti-vision. How much of your life already looks like your anti-vision? Start by choosing just one area and think about what changes you could make to shift away from your anti-vision and enter into the essence of your dream life. This does require you to be honest with yourself, and some tough emotions might arise. If you want some more guidance on how to process those tough emotions, check out my emotions processing guide up here. When you start to think about making actual changes, this is when negativity bias is going to show up. It'll tell you all the reasons why it's not possible, why it's too hard, or why you don't deserve any better than the life you currently have. But remember, this is just your brain trying to keep you safe. Instead of resisting your negativity bias, see if you can use it to your advantage. What is the anti-vision showing you about the life that you want? And what are the obstacles in your way? Essentially, what does your negativity bias tell you about where you need to go and what you need to do in order to overcome your anti-vision? How can you make small changes to start to honor your deepest needs and values? What are some tiny shifts that you can make to move closer to the opposite of your anti-vision, aka your dream life? Creating an anti-vision is not about focusing on what you don't want forever. It's about using what you don't want to illuminate what it is you do want and building the self-trust as you go after that version. What's your anti-vision for your life? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear about them.